Do you remember what you were doing when you heard about the JFK assassination?
Yes, I was shopping in Reseda, California, and I had left my daughter babysitting with my best friend in Reseda, and when I finished shopping, I went back to her house, and she came out on the porch holding Julie and said, "The president's been shot and he's dead."
Throughout the 60s and 70s, how was your life and what were you doing at the time?
In the 60s and 70s, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was taking care of my two children, Stephen and Julie.
Okay. Do you remember when Hawaii became a part of the Union in 1956?
Yes, I do. That's the year that I was married.
And how did it feel to have a new state in the country?
Oh, I thought it was great. Yeah. Well, say that again.
They passed the law for no discrimination in jobs and voting. So what's your opinion? Like what?
Oh, I thought it was great. I think everybody that's a citizen should be able to vote, whether it doesn't matter what nationality or.
Okay. Did you ever hear about the Watergate crisis?
Yes, I did.
And what was your opinion towards that and everything that occurred in that?
Well, it happened during the Democratic convention, and according to what I read, President Nixon really didn't know what was going on. This is what he said, and he was trying to protect his people. And as the news came out more and more, he resigned as president.
And also during the 60s, they landed the first man on the moon. How was it like hearing about that and knowing that?
Oh, that was fabulous. We watched it on television, and Stephen that was in 1969. He was 9 years old, and Julie was 6 years old, and it was really something to watch on television. Yeah.
And what was one experience that you will never forget that occurred during this time period?
During the 60s?
Yeah, in 70s.
Well, the walk on the moon for one, and the civil rights was in the 60s. You know, the South, everything that was going on in the South. So the Selma March and everything, you know, for the blacks that were in the South. And there was the Manson case that was big news. And the Beatles came over from London in the 60s, and that was big news. And gosh, there was a lot going on in the 60s.
What was the Manson case?
The Manson case was a man named Charlie Manson, and he had a place in Topanga Canyon and in Chatsworth, in Box Canyon, and they were on drugs, and they murdered, I think, 6 or 7 people. And he's still in prison. He's still alive, and he's still in prison.
Really?
And so are the girls that helped him. It was in Selma, Alabama. I'm not sure about that, but I think so. Martin Luther King was assassinated.
How was he assassinated?
He was shot. He was standing on the balcony of a hotel where he was staying, and he was shot.
And were there a lot of like riots after this, or like?
That I can't remember if they had riots there or not, because I didn't live there, but I know it was a terrible thing.
It was all over the news.
Oh yeah, Martin Luther King, he was ahead of the whole movement for the blacks.
Yeah.
And he was only 46 years old when he was killed. And now they have, a holiday named after him. General of the United States during his presidency ran for president in 1968, and he was also assassinated. So in that family, they had 2
Why do you think they were both killed?
Why were they killed? Well, I don't know. You know, there's bad people. They never did find out why this young Palestinian killed him. And they also didn't really find out why that young Russian killed President Kennedy. There was lots of theories that the gangsters were behind it, the Cubans were behind it. Nobody really, they just know that they caught him right after it happened.
Oh,
Oswell.
What can you tell me about the Cuban Missile Crisis?
Oh, the Cuban Missile Crisis, I think that was in, gosh, what year was that? Well, it was after, it must have been 61 or 62. And everybody, I remember this really big time, we came really close to going to war. Russia sent missiles over to Cuba, and they were directed at us. And Cuba is only how many miles from Florida? Not very far. And people were going to the market, and they were buying food and water and stocking up. And I even bought a lot, because Stephen was a baby then. That was before Julie was born. And I had a little crawl space underneath the house in my closet. And I had a lot of food and water and stuff in case a missile came over, you know. So it was a scary time. But President Kennedy, he didn't back down, and the Russians took the missiles out of Cuba.